Welcome back to Women of Worth, the podcast where we empower women to create lives filled with balance, joy, and purpose. Today we're diving into a topic that's not just a luxury, but a necessity: building inner peace. Let's be honest, life can be overwhelming. Between work, family, relationships, and personal goals, finding moments of calm can feel impossible. But what if I told you that inner peace isn't about eliminating chaos, but learning to navigate it with grace? In this episode, we'll explore powerful yet practical ways to cultivate inner peace. From setting boundaries and embracing gratitude to simplifying your life and celebrating small wins, you'll discover actionable tips that you can start using today. You'll also hear real-life stories of women just like you who've transformed their lives by prioritizing peace. So if you're ready to let go of stress, reclaim your calm, and live more intentionally, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you do to find inner peace? Share your insights in the comments below. All right, let's dive in and unlock the secrets to inner peace together.
Welcome to our deep dive, all about the power of letting go. And, I think this is something you're really interested in for living a more peaceful and fulfilling life. So we've got some really interesting research and even some personal stories that we're going to unpack today. One story that really stuck with me was about this woman, Rachel, and how she was holding on to this really toxic friendship. It drained her for years, but when she finally let go, she experienced this incredible peace.
Yeah, it's amazing how often we cling to things even when they're not good for us anymore. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore what letting go really means, but also why it's so important, and even a bit about the science behind it.
I am so ready to dive in. The sources we've got for this episode really emphasize that letting go isn't about giving up. It's more about creating space for something new.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like this. You're carrying around all this heavy baggage. Maybe it's an old grudge you're holding on to. Maybe it's a relationship that just isn't working anymore. It could even be like old beliefs that don't really reflect who you are now. Letting go is about putting that baggage down and being free to, move on.
I love that analogy. It makes me think of how I hold on to clothes I don't even wear anymore just because I feel bad getting rid of them. But then when I finally do clean out my closet, I feel so much lighter and freer.
That's a great example. And that feeling you get, that lightness and freedom, is one of the biggest benefits of letting go. It helps us get that inner peace back because we're letting go of all that negative energy we've been holding on to.
So you're saying that holding on to things like anger or resentment or guilt is actually stopping us from experiencing real peace.
It really can. Think about it. When you keep replaying a hurtful event over and over in your head, or maybe you're dwelling on some mistake you made in the past, you're actually keeping those negative emotions alive, and letting go is about freeing yourself from that burden.
It makes me think about Rachel's story, the one we talked about before. She felt like she had to stay in that toxic friendship, even though it was obviously affecting her mental health.
And she carried all that guilt and obligation for years. It wasn't until she decided to put her own well-being first that she was finally able to break free.
And what's interesting is that letting go isn't just about peace. It's also about discovering yourself.
Oh, absolutely. When we finally let go of those things that aren't serving us, we create space to figure out who we really are, what we really want, what we value, what we're capable of.
It's like clearing all this clutter away to finally see the beautiful picture underneath.
I like that. It's about uncovering your true self, the one that's been hidden under all these societal expectations, and all those limiting beliefs and old habits.
That's so inspiring. But I have to say, as much as letting go sounds great, it's really hard to actually do. Why is that?
The sources we looked at pointed to a few big things, and I think there are things that a lot of people can relate to. The first one is fear of the unknown. Humans, we crave certainty. We want to know what's going to happen, and letting go means embracing the unknown, which can be kind of scary.
It's like we'd rather stay in our comfort zone, even if it's not all that comfortable anymore. At least it's familiar.
Exactly. We get so attached to a certain way of being, even when it's not good for us anymore.
Didn't I read something about our brains being wired to resist change?
You're right. There's this really interesting study in behavioral psychology, and the researchers found that our brains are naturally drawn to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are actually stressing us out or making us unhappy. Our brains see them as safe because they're predictable.
So it's not just our emotions, it's our brain chemistry making it hard to let go.
Yeah, but here's the good news. That same study also found that if we expose ourselves to new things and new patterns, our brains start to adapt. So the key is to gradually step outside of our comfort zone and start challenging those patterns we've gotten so used to.
That's pretty encouraging. Means we can train ourselves to be okay with change and uncertainty.
For sure. Now, another thing that stops us from letting go is guilt and attachment. Sometimes we stay in relationships or stick to certain habits because we feel guilty or afraid of hurting someone else.
I get that. I've totally done that. Staying in situations way longer than I should have because I didn't want to disappoint anyone.
It's a common struggle. But it's important to remember that putting your own well-being first isn't selfish. It actually allows you to be more present in your relationships and go after things that make you feel alive.
So sometimes letting go is the best thing we can do for both ourselves and other people.
Exactly. And the last thing we'll talk about is this. We get comfort from routine. We all have our routines and habits, and they can help us feel stable and organized. But sometimes we get so stuck in our routines that we resist any kind of change, even if it's good for us.
It's like we're scared to shake things up, even if we're not happy with how things are.
And that's where letting go comes in. It's about questioning those patterns we've created for ourselves and being open to new possibilities. You have to realize that growth and change often mean stepping outside of our comfort zones.
Okay, so we've talked about why letting go is important and what keeps us from doing it. But how do we actually let go? How do we take back our power and really embrace this whole process of letting go?
The research outlines 5 steps, and I think you'll find them really helpful and empowering.
Okay, I'm ready. This is where it's really interesting.
The first step might seem simple, but it's super important. You have to figure out what's not serving you anymore.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't let go of something if you don't even realize you're holding on to it in the first place, right?
Right. So you need to really look at yourself. Think about your life, relationships, habits, even your beliefs, and ask yourself, what's causing stress? What's making me unhappy? What's holding me back from living the life I want?
I like that the sources actually recommend writing it all down. Putting it on paper can make it easier to deal with.
It's a really effective way to bring all those hidden fears and limiting beliefs to the surface.
They also gave the example of Emma, who realized that her constant need for approval from other people came from deep-seated beliefs about her own self-worth, and those beliefs weren't helping her anymore.
And just by becoming aware of that pattern, she was able to start to change those beliefs and build her confidence from within. She didn't need to rely on validation from other people anymore.
That's a perfect example of how recognizing what's going on is the first step towards making a change.
Absolutely. Once you've figured out what you need to let go of, then you can move on to step 2.
Okay, bring on step 2. I feel like this is where things really start to change.
It is. And it all begins with changing how you see things. So step 2 is all about shifting your perspective. Instead of looking at letting go as a loss, you start seeing it as a chance for something new. You realize that by letting go of what's no longer working, you're making room for something even better to come into your life.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. But how do you actually do that? Like, how do you actually reframe things?
You have to focus on what you're gaining, not on what you're losing. So instead of dwelling on how uncomfortable change can be, ask yourself, what kind of freedom am I creating for myself? What new possibilities are opening up? What kind of peace will I find when I let go of this?
So it's like looking past the initial discomfort and focusing on the long-term benefits.
Exactly. And the sources give a really good example of this with a guy named Daniel. He had this job that was stable, but it was also really frustrating. He felt stuck.
I can imagine that was tough.
Yeah, it was a difficult decision for him. At first, he was anxious about leaving a steady paycheck.
Leaving a secure job can be scary.
Definitely. But instead of focusing on what he might lose, he changed his perspective. He started to see leaving that job not as a failure, but as a chance to go after his dream. He had always wanted to start his own business.
So he shifted his focus from fear to excitement.
Exactly. And that shift made all the difference. He was able to let go of that secure job and embrace the unknown. And it paid off. He started his own business and ended up feeling much more fulfilled and successful.
That's a great example of how powerful it can be to change your perspective. It can help you make big choices and build a life that you really love.
Absolutely. Now, step 3 is all about forgiveness. This can be the hardest step, but it's really important for letting go of that negative energy.
Forgiveness is something I struggle with too. When someone hurts you or does you wrong, it's so easy to hold on to resentment and anger.
I know, it's a natural reaction. But the sources make it clear that forgiving someone doesn't mean you're saying what they did was okay. It's about you freeing yourself from those negative emotions.
So it's not about condoning their actions. It's about letting go of the anger and resentment so you can move on.
Exactly. And they offer some good tips on how to actually practice forgiveness. One thing you can do is write a forgiveness letter, even if you never actually send it. Just expressing your feelings and acknowledging the hurt can help you start to let go.
I've tried that before, and it was really helpful. It felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders just to write it all down.
Yeah, it's really powerful. If writing isn't your thing, you can also practice self-compassion. You can use affirmations, like repeating phrases to yourself, like, I forgive myself for my past mistakes, or I am worthy of love and forgiveness. This can help change the way you think and make you more forgiving overall.
I like that. It's like treating yourself with the same kindness you would show a friend.
That's it. And there's a story in the sources about a woman named Sarah. Her business had failed and she was blaming herself.
Oh, that must have been awful.
It was. But she chose to practice forgiveness instead of dwelling on the negative. She forgave herself for the mistakes she made, realizing that she did the best she could with the information she had at the time.
It's a good reminder that everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them and how we choose to move forward.
You got it. And by forgiving herself, Sarah was able to let go of the guilt and shame and start fresh with a new sense of purpose.
That's really inspiring. It shows that forgiveness is a gift you give to yourselves.
Exactly. And that leads us to step 4, which is all about creating rituals to solidify your decision to let go.
Rituals. That's interesting. Tell me more.
Rituals can be really powerful because they give you a tangible way to mark a transition or to let go of something. It makes the whole process feel more real.
It's like a physical action that represents your internal decision to let go.
Right. And they talk about a few different rituals in the sources that you can try. One common example is burning a letter. You write down all those negative thoughts and feelings, everything you want to release, and then you burn the paper.
It's symbolic, like you're releasing it out into the universe.
Yeah. Another powerful ritual is decluttering. Getting rid of physical clutter can help clear your mind and emotions, too.
I love decluttering. I always feel so much better afterward.
Yeah, it's amazing how connected our physical and mental spaces are. They also mention a story about Lisa, who was dealing with a lot of anxiety and regret. She wrote all her fears and regrets down on separate pieces of paper and then burned them.
Did it work? Did she feel better?
She said she felt this instant relief, like a huge weight had been lifted. It was like the act of burning those papers actually helped her let go of those fears and regrets.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It shows how powerful rituals can be.
Definitely. And that brings us to the final step, getting support.
That's so important. We don't have to go through this alone, right?
You're right, letting go can be tough, and it's much easier when you have support. It could be friends, family, a therapist, or even a support group. Being around people who get it and who encourage you can make a huge difference.
It's about having people who believe in you, even when you're doubting yourself, people you can talk to and who will be there for you when things are hard.
Exactly. And in the sources, there's a story about a woman named Mia who decided to leave a bad relationship. It was a really hard decision, but it was the right one for her.
That must have taken so much courage.
It did, but she had a great support system. Her friends and family were there for her every step of the way. They encouraged her, helped her out, and gave her a safe space to deal with her emotions.
That's a beautiful reminder that there are people who care and want to help us when we're going through tough times. We don't have to do it all alone.
And sometimes the best support comes from a professional, someone who can give you an objective viewpoint and help you with proven techniques to work through those challenges.
So we've talked about the 5 steps to letting go.
Yeah.
Identifying what's no longer serving you, reframing your perspective, practicing forgiveness, creating rituals, and seeking support. What are some of the benefits we can expect to see if we put these steps into practice?
The benefits are pretty amazing. And it's not just about feeling good. There's actually research to back up the positive impact letting go can have on our overall well-being.
Really? I'd love to hear more about the science behind it all.
So there was this study published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, and they found that people who actively practice letting go reported being more satisfied with their lives, having a stronger sense of purpose, and experiencing less stress and anxiety.
That makes sense. If you're not weighed down by all that baggage, of course you'll feel happier and more at ease.
It makes a difference. And that's not all. Letting go has also been linked to things like improved mental clarity, better relationships, personal growth, more energy, higher self-esteem, and even better physical health.
Wow, that's incredible. It really does sound like letting go is the key to living a happier and more fulfilling life.
It really does. But like with anything worthwhile, it takes work and dedication.
So letting go has all these amazing benefits, but it's not a quick fix. It takes effort.
That's right. And remember, letting go is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when it's hard, and that's okay. Just keep practicing, keep learning, and keep growing.
What are some things we can do to start incorporating letting go into our daily lives, especially if we're feeling overwhelmed or don't know where to begin?
The best advice is to start small. You don't have to change your whole life at once. Even little things, if you do them consistently, can make a big difference over time.
To take baby steps and focus on one thing at a time.
Exactly. Maybe you could start by decluttering one drawer or setting boundaries with someone at work who's been draining your energy. Or maybe try practicing mindfulness for just a few minutes each day.
It all comes down to consistency, right? Those small changes over time can lead to huge transformations.
That's the key. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins. Give yourself credit for every step you take towards letting go, no matter how small it might seem.
It's about recognizing your progress and celebrating your wins. It keeps you motivated to keep going.
Right. And one area where letting go is especially beneficial is in creating inner peace, which can be super important for women who are often juggling a lot of different roles and responsibilities.
That's something I'd love to talk more about. Are there any specific examples in the sources of how women can use these principles of letting go to create more peace and balance in their lives?
Yeah, the sources have a bunch of practical examples, and they kind of all tie back to those 5 steps we talked about. And, one of the most important ones is making self-care a priority. It's realizing that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's actually super important for your well-being. And when you take care of yourself, you're able to show up better for the people in your life.
I totally agree with that. I think a lot of women are taught to put everyone else's needs before their own.
That's true, and it can lead to feeling burned out and resentful. The sources talk about Emma's story, and she found that just taking 30 minutes a day to journal and reflect made a huge difference in how stressed she felt, and it helped her feel more peaceful overall.
30 minutes. That actually seems doable, even on a busy day. It's a good reminder that self-care doesn't have to be some big, elaborate thing. It's those small things you do consistently that really make a difference.
Exactly. And speaking of small things, they also talk a lot about practicing mindfulness. Basically, it's about bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment. And that can really help you break free from those cycles of worry and overthinking that can steal your peace.
I've been wanting to learn more about mindfulness. Do the sources have any examples of how to actually do it?
Yeah, they mentioned this woman, Sarah. She found that practicing mindful eating actually changed her whole relationship with food. And it helped her appreciate the simple things more. It's all about slowing down, really tasting each bite, and paying attention to all the flavors and textures.
That sounds really interesting. Instead of just rushing through meals or eating while you're distracted by your phone, you're really present in the moment.
Right, and you can do the same thing in other areas of your life, like taking a mindful walk in nature, paying attention to your breath, or even just noticing how your feet feel on the ground. All of that can help you feel more grounded and present.
The sources also talk about setting boundaries. And I think that's especially important for women who often have a lot of caregiving responsibilities.
Yeah, boundaries are so important for protecting your time and energy and also for your emotional health. It's about saying no to things that drain you and prioritizing what really matters.
Do they give any advice on how to set boundaries, especially with work and family?
They do. They mention Maria, who felt completely overwhelmed by everything she had to do for work and family. So she set this rule for herself. No work calls or emails after dinner. And that gave her more time to relax and be with her family.
I like that. It's a simple boundary, but it makes a big difference. It shows that boundaries don't have to be mean or aggressive. It's just about clear communication and putting the important things first.
That's it. And sometimes setting boundaries means letting go of control. You have to accept that you can't control everything or everyone around you.
Oh, that's a tough one. I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with wanting to control everything.
It's really common, but it can cause a lot of stress and frustration. There's this story in the sources about Julia. She had a coworker who was just super negative all the time.
We've all worked with people like that.
For sure. But Julia realized she couldn't change her coworker's behavior. So instead of trying to control something she couldn't, she shifted her focus. She realized she could control her own reactions, and she chose not to let her coworker's negativity affect her.
So it's about accepting what you can't change and focusing on what you can control, which is your own thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Exactly. And last but not least, the sources talk about the importance of gratitude. It's about focusing on what you do have instead of what you don't, appreciating all the good things in your life, and just feeling content with where you are.
I've been trying to practice gratitude more too. And it's amazing how much of a difference it can make. Even on a bad day, it helps you focus on the positive.
It really does. They have Laura's story, and she makes it a point to write down 3 things she's grateful for every single day. And she says this simple practice helps her stay positive and appreciate all the good stuff in her life, even when things are tough.
I like that. It's like you're training your brain to focus on the good no matter what's going on.
Exactly. And those are just a few examples of how we can create more peace in our lives by letting go.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I finally understand what letting go really means and how it can help us all live more peacefully and create more fulfilling lives.
I agree. It's been a really good conversation.
And the best part about these deep dives is that it's just the beginning. Now it's up to us to take this information and use it.
For sure. We want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your takeaways from today? What's one thing you're ready to let go of to make your life more peaceful and purposeful?
You can share your thoughts in the comments, send us an email, or connect with us on social media. We're all in this together, and we can learn so much from each other.
So until next time, remember, you have the power to let go. Embrace it and watch your life change for the better.